It takes about a quarter inch of rain before you start to see it soak in. Then you get some benefit from the other grasses. Brad's thickness is about an inch. That's pretty good. That's not bad. As straighter, ours runs more of around, inch and a half to 3 inches. So the poorer your management is in terms of nutrient cycling, the thicker that layer, that thatch layer will be. And so what you're trying to do is create a healthy soil system so that your microbes can get up there and actually consume that thatch layer. And I say that, but it's more difficult than you think. It's just hard to get moisture past that thatch layer. And that's typical of these bluegrass pastures. And so you try to manage these. There's a fine line. You manage your grasslands to create litter to cover the soil, but not have too much litter, or you build more thatch. And so you're trying to get this grazing scenario. And I love the way Brad moves through here multiple times. I mean, the great way to create efficiency in your grazing strategy is to capture your regrowth and to use this kind of disturbance to enhance root dynamics. I see Rob over there, and we talk about drought. Go up to his country. That's where the drought's at.
Not pretty,
but not pretty. So the other grass in here, I did mark some here. Where's my flags? Over here. Most of you probably from a distance think this is probably brome grass. It's fairly green. This is quack grass, which also tells you that this has probably been farmed at one time. You'll see quack versus brome. This is probably was seeded to an alfalfa brome mix. And I would say, at least 50 years ago. But the quack grass is also very common on some of these disturbed soils. Otherwise, you'd see some more brome. You'll notice that this is much greener. Why is it much greener?
cool season.
That's cool. So is chewing grass. Right, deeper rooted. Quack grass has a really deep root system, so it can get down and grab the water, where bluegrass doesn't have that advantage. So the first thing to brown up is your bluegrass. Like we see in here, the bluegrass is going to get browner and browner, and it's probably not going to get a whole lot greener, even with a lot of rain, because it's headed out. I had a lot of producers ask me this year, what should I do on these pastures that are dominated by bluegrass? And a number of them deferred grazing. They just kept their cows home, and then they fed them. And there's a fine line there. I said that's fine to do that to a point, but I think almost all these pastures should have had cows on them by June 1. Because once they head out, it's done growing for the year. It has to come back through a tiller. So if you can keep it in the vegetative state, when it does rain, it will grow. You can get that growth in the month of July and August, as long as it's in the vegetative state. And so it's nice to defer a little while. At the station, we deferred for 1 week. We waited till May 24th to go out, and we've been rotating through our systems since then to stay on top of the bluegrass. So these are probably the dominant two grass species here. I did mark a native grass here. So there is native grass scattered kind of throughout Brad's pastures over here. We'll go over to the other side where there's more natives. This is green needle grass, another cool season grass. That's common. This is one of my favorite grasses because it's palatable. It's a nice grass to have in terms of cover for birds, and it's ecologically what I call a higher end grass. So that's green needle grass, another cool season grass. I heard earlier today talked about reseeding back to native grasses, and I know Brad wants to do some big blue and some switch. Probably put a little Indian in there, maybe a little side oats. Remember, we are in North Dakota and not in Kansas, so we need to have cool seasons in that mix to kind of give you that diversity. Anything we do for management, our goal is soils and plant diversity. Those two are your drivers. The more diverse your plant community is, the healthier your soils will be. Now, this is not really diverse because of the history on where we're standing today. But we'll go down and I'll show a few more plants down here. Any questions on bluegrass in particular? Or chewing grass?
With the drought and that bluegrass wasn't growing, and we had a bunch of rain, will it come back later, or is it pretty much done for the year?
As long as it hasn't headed out, it will green up. And if it's like these grasses here that are headed out, they'll be done. They're done. But everything else in here that hasn't headed out, and I don't know if Brad's been in this pasture yet. Probably not.
Yeah.
You've been here once?
I've been on all these.
Okay. So he'll come back in this one again. And his goal is to try and get some even distribution, to get some use on that grass so he minimizes heading. Your goal should be to minimize heading. You know, there's also this fallacy that we want to produce seeds. We want to regrow from seeds. That's not the way it works in the Northern Plains. We regrow by roots. And so to get roots to grow what I call more aggressively, it has to be grazed. When you graze it, you change the carbon and nitrogen balance. It responds by putting its tillers out and shoots up. A bunch grass produces a bigger bunch by creating more carbon above ground. And so that should be your goal, is always to try and enhance root growth. And you can only do that through disturbance, and usually grazing is the #1 tool. So for those of you who think grazing is bad, you're wrong. And I know none of you think that. But grazing is a great tool to keep our grasses healthy.
Kevin.
Yeah.
There should have been more cows in here to get more of this
Right.
ate off, so we didn't do it for dry years. What do? You know, it's a horse apiece, and then you gotta get them through the winter too. You know, which is it's tough stuff.
Yeah. So Brad's comment was there really should be more cows in here to get a better distribution, and I agree. And you know, I'm trying to figure out what's a fine line of stock density to get that kind of benefit. And we run on our rotation system 1-to-1, and that's still not heavy enough, but it's better than 3-to-1, 3 acres to 1. The 1-to-1 at least gives me where cows will graze everything in the pasture. If you can get it to 2-to-1, you get much better distribution. The higher your stock density is, though, the more you got to rotate quicker. You know, there's a fine line of how much labor do you have available to you at the same time. Any other questions on these 3 grasses? You're going to have to walk.